Hi everyone, so today I'll be walking you through the fascinating process of how oxygens bind to heme, the structural changes that occur in hemoglobin as a result, and how this interaction changes between the lungs and capillaries. And I'll also explain how carbon dioxide influences the blood pH and why this matters for oxygen delivery, or the concept known as the Bohr effect. So let's begin with hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein found in red blood cells, and it's responsible for carrying oxygen from the lungs to tissues throughout the body. Structurally, hemoglobin is made up of 4 subunits, each with its own heme group. And at the center of each heme group is an iron ion, and this is where oxygen binds. And on the slide here, you can see a visual representation of the hemoglobin. And notice how the heme groups are nestled within the folds of each subunit, as you can see over here. And these heme groups are what gives hemoglobin its ability to transport oxygen efficiently. So now when an oxygen molecule binds to the iron in one of the heme groups, something remarkable happens, and this is the entire protein changes shape. So this is known as conformational change, and hemoglobin shifts from what we call the tense or T state, which has low affinity for oxygen, to the relaxed or R state, which has a high affinity for oxygen. And this change makes it easier for the next oxygen molecule to bind, a phenomenon called cooperative binding. And you can see this transition illustrated in the diagram here, where the protein becomes more open and ready to hold onto more oxygen. So in the lungs, where oxygen levels are high and the pH is also relatively high, hemoglobin is primarily in its R state, and that means it binds oxygen tightly, loading up as it passes through the alveolar capillaries. But when red blood cells travel to tissues, especially active tissues that are producing carbon dioxide, the situation changes, and in these capillaries, the environment is more acidic, meaning the pH is lower. And under these conditions, hemoglobin tends to return to the T state, where it has a lower affinity for oxygen. And this encourages the release of oxygen, allowing it to diffuse into surrounding tissues where it's needed most. So the pH becomes lower in these tissues, which brings us to the Bohr effect, which you could see right here. And basically, as tissues undergo metabolism, they produce CO2 as a waste product, and when CO2 enters the bloodstream, it reacts with water to form carbonic acid, and this acid dissociates into bicarbonate and produces it dissociates into bicarbonate and protons, which lowers the pH, and the presence of these extra protons stabilizes hemoglobin's T state, making it more likely to release oxygen. So over here, you actually see the Bohr effect. So you'll see how CO2, water, and enzymes in red blood cells all work together to change blood chemistry. And this isn't a random change, it's actually an adaptation that ensures oxygen is delivered to exactly where it's needed most. And the more CO2 a tissue produces, the more acidic it becomes, and the more oxygen hemoglobin is encouraged to release. So over here, to summarize, hemoglobin acts like a delivery system in the lungs, where oxygen is a lot and the pH is high. It binds oxygen tightly, and in the capillaries, where oxygen is low and carbon dioxide is high, leading to lower pH, hemoglobin loosens its grip and lets oxygen go. So this balance, regulated through structural changes in blood chemistry, is what allows our bodies to function smoothly, even as conditions shift from one part of the body to another. And that's all. Thank you for listening.